Welcome to our Let's Talk Tuesday on Native American Heritage, and we are very lucky to have Mrs. Hernandez and her student body president, Tiavi, from Owyhee High School to join us. And also today we have Ijun, our NASC webmaster. Right, so Ijun, you want to start off with our first question for our guests?
Right, yes. So the first question is, what does being Native American mean to you?
Do you want to go first, Tiavi?
Sure. So I am Shoshone and Paiute, and I'm an enrolled member of the Reno Sparks Indian Colony in Reno. But I'm also a part of this community here in Owyhee. And what it means to be Native American is it shows how strong our people were that I'm still here. And how after all the horrible things that have happened, our people still survive and we're here to this day. And there's a lot of people who have never even met a Native person. So it's cool to be Native, and I'm very proud of it, and I'm proud of my ancestry. And it's something I'm very open about because I want people to learn about me and my community.
To me, I feel like there's just everything I fill my day with makes me happy to be who I am. I've lived here like pre-K through 12. I went away for college and I came back and now I'm teaching here. And I feel like growing up here in this culture that I'm immersed in, I don't know any different. Like when I leave the reservation and I go to Boise or Elko or Reno, I feel like I'm still carrying it happily with me. I am also, she said she's enrolled in the Reno Sparks Indian Colony. I'm enrolled here in Owyhee and I'm just Northern Paiute. But there's a lot of dynamics to these things, but it's just, we're very similar in the way we think and what we believe. Siabi and I, that is. But it's just something we're both very passionate and proud of.
Fantastic.
Awesome.
Would you say, going off what you just shared with us, as carrying it with you every day, like as a Native American person, when you go out into those larger communities, how are you, like, because you said you feel like you take it everywhere with you. In what aspects, like, do you feel that the presence of your culture is with you?
Just being, I don't want to say I speak for the people or I represent them, but in a sense, I kind of still do. I carry my culture, whether it be just like these simple beaded earrings or saying like just the little lingos that we have, and we carry around with us we call it town when we go to town. And I don't know, I feel like as a teacher and a parent, I speak up a little bit more for anything that makes us who we are, or people who might think we're something that we're not. So I don't know if I totally answered that question.
Yeah,
but
I totally get it. It's not only something that's interior to your soul, but it's also how you're showing yourself to the world with your exterior, like representing your culture through what you wear. And I think that's really awesome. Which brings us to our next question, because I was lucky enough, I taught for McDermott for 6 years. So I got to be part of their community for a little while. And there are many times that I still miss being up there, because that was part of my favorite thing, getting to interact with the tribe and getting to see culture in action. And so what does it mean to honor and celebrate your cultures and keep your traditions alive? That's our next question.
So I'm a very much like modern Native person. I have like Instagram and Snapchat, but I also go berry picking with my grandma and I go dig roots. And I honor that just by waking up every morning, and my mom burns cedar. I don't know any different. So honoring my culture is just like living, which I think is really awesome. I'm really like thankful and grateful that I have those opportunities. My grandma, she's also a fluent Paiute speaker, so that's also another way I can learn more about myself and learn my language.
That's great.
And I think for me, I'm speaking as a teacher right now. I'm the English teacher as well as the advisor here at Owyhee. And even like the assignments we're doing, I tried to incorporate some stories. Like some people haven't been exposed to the stories due to like erasure or like colonization in general. So like some families are like that culture loss is more prominent than it is with either Siavi or myself. So I kind of try to incorporate a lot of local Paiute and Shoshone, Owyhee, Duck Valley, as well as like our surrounding tribes with the Tomoka colonies in Elko, Battle Mountain, and Wells. And then we have a lot of neighboring reservations in Idaho as well. But just incorporating stories, making the kids go out and ask people things. We talk about stories that are here in our community with like creation stories. Right now, my 10th graders are going out and we like made our own genre called Res Gothic Literature. And so we're incorporating Gothic literature and turning it into like incorporating reservation stories with it. And we use words. I used to, not so much since the pandemic started, but we used to have a word of the week. And it was a Paiute word of the week, and everyone got extra credit if they were like able to incorporate it naturally into the day. That's kind of gone away since like things are a little bit wonky. But we just trying to keep it in our minds and continue carrying it with us. Language and culture and being who we are.
Okay.
Hey, Jean?
Awesome. Yes. So the next question has something. Sorry, let me just start over. As a person in the South of Nevada and then a person in a public education system, I definitely feel like the school system doesn't really educate us or show us more about Native American history and culture. So going off of that, and that's something that I'm grateful for, that we're having this conversation right now and having this resource for a lot of the Nevada students. So going off on that, why do you think it's important to represent diverse and Native American voices, experiences, and perspectives?
Okay. So I've lived in cities and off the res, and I didn't know that people didn't know natives existed. And we would learn like little things around like Thanksgiving about like Christopher Columbus and the natives, and it was always like a happy story. And then sometimes they would be like, oh, and they killed lots of people, but they were friends, something like that. And then when they talked about natives, I was like the only native kid, and then they would ask me to speak on behalf of all the natives. And not only does it put you on the spot, but it doesn't feel right. Like it feels like they don't really care, and they just want you to speak because you're native. And I think that schools need to have more accurate native representation, because as native people, we should be able to feel proud of who we are and not like, oh my gosh, they're native. Like, we need to normalize being around because we're everywhere, especially in Nevada. I think we're like part of like the top 6 most native populated tribes in the country. And people need to know we're here because we're everywhere. And yeah.
I think like, wait, I'm sorry, can you say that? Just so it's refreshed in my mind.
Yes. Okay. So the question is, why is it important to represent diverse and Native American voices, experiences, and perspectives?
Yeah. So when we think about like other minorities in the state, people are celebrating Black History Month. People are celebrating Latinx Heritage Month, and like we're kind of just like swept under the rug. Like there's not a lot of them. Like who do we ask these questions? So just being present, and I mean, like how many kids know Washington County is named after a tribe, right? How many people know that just 10, 15 minutes north, or is that west of Spanish Springs, like directly, if you follow that hill on Spanish Springs, one of Nevada's largest powwows and largest gatherings is taking place there. So it's very, very present. I think it's just a matter of how much you want to challenge what you know and what you don't know. And just being mindful, like we work meticulously to make sure everyone we can see is represented, but like we kind of blend in with other minorities with last names of Hernandez and Melendez. So it's really easy to be overlooked. So just being cautious and thinking about everything that the resilience and all of these things.
And would you say, like, as a Caucasian woman who taught on a Native American reservation school, I was always willing to ask those questions because I was the minority there. And so to me, I think we need to take more of an opportunity to ask the right questions, but also ask for help so we can ask the right questions. Because I would never have known that one of the largest powwows ever is right 15 minutes north of Spanish Springs. And so like things like that are very significant to our Native American compadres is something that I would want to know more about. I may not, as where I grew up, I had maybe 1 or 2 Native American students in my class, but as you said, they blend in with the last name of Hernandez. We had some Mendez's, we had some Mercados, but they're blending in. And so I can see where you can say that our Native American students and our tribes sometimes are going to be getting looked over because they're blending in with those Latin American last names or those Caucasian last names. So it's figuring out how can we help you to voice what, so that we can also learn, is what I'm, as a person that's being part of this conversation, is taking away from it. And I think that's important. Which brings us to the next big thing, which has been a big topic of conversation over the last few years, especially with athletics. Okay. Over the years, several athletic teams have had Native American inspired mascots. Okay. And then we've also seen some of those mascots just go away. How can, like, as a Native American person, if a team wanted to keep a Native American mascot, how could they go about that to represent the culture in a positive way without it being negative? What are some of your thoughts on that?
You want me to go?
Yeah, you can go first.
Okay, so it's really tricky, like just keeping in mind, we are only speaking for ourselves. We are not speaking for our school or our community. But I think just being able to have things challenge my mind in the way I think even though we represent, as Owyhee Braves, I think we represent ourselves fantastically. But I think once, like even with our mascot, which is a little bit dated, we kind of set ourselves up in specific ways. So like it's saying this is what we look like and this is what we wear and this is what we do. And we are only limited to this image as well as other mascots because everything's old. Everything has a big nose, everything has feathers. Everything is the primitive Indian that we are not today. So I don't know, it's just hard. It's really easy to fall into stereotypes. It's really easy to have the feather and the nose and the red skin. I don't know, it's just challenging. I feel like it's, as well as you represent yourself, it just sets you up to fall into those stereotypes, to be like, no matter how hard you say we are modern and we are contemporary and we exist today, like these images still tell the rest of society, this is what we look like. And we only look like this, and we only wear feathers, and we only have big noses, and these are the things. So it's hard, like, you hear people say, but we've been here for so long, but like before whatever year 1903 existed, that's it. I don't know. It's I could go on all day about this.
Yeah.
I personally think that, especially for our community, we're going through that right now with like, oh, do we keep the mascot or do we change the mascot? But recently our tribe decided that we were going to keep Brave. And honestly, I think that's really hypocritical of us. And it's hypocritical of us to be like, oh, but we've been the Braves for so long. But at the same time, we're not really Braves. We're Native people, and that's been our mascot, but we're not Braves. And then just 2 hours away is Elko Indians, and we're like, oh, but they should change their name. They can't be Indians, but we can be Braves because we're Indians. But at the same time, not all of us are Indian. Not all of us are Native. So what's the difference? And I think that if we want change, we have to change. And I think it's a lot of like outdated, it's really outdated. And it's like people with kind of like that old mindset of, oh, it's been this way for so long, but so has a lot of other things. Things change and things have to change because it's going to change anyways. But you should change it because you want to change it, because you want things to be better and not because you have to. So like other things we can do, we can like have an animal that has like a Paiute name, like to represent us better than like the stereotypical native with the big nose and the red skin and the feathers. So I think if you ask a lot of like younger generation people, it's going to be like, let's have the change. And I think that's what we should be aiming for.
Do you think, as you said, with the younger generation of Native Americans, do you think it would be a positive move to figure out something like you said, maybe having that animal with a Paiute name to be represented, but still would still bring your culture and help educate the people that get to come visit Owyhee or play? I know Owyehee's a hot spot to visit. I remember when we'd come up there for our basketball games with McDermott, and it was like families coming together, which I know there are several. But I just think, would you say that that would be a positive way? Like if the younger generation took that initiative to blend keeping the culture alive, but then taking it into a modern, more relevant direction is what I'm going at. Do you think that the younger generation would be up for that challenge?
Absolutely.
Definitely.
I think also for those of us who have like these valid logical reasons to say this is why we shouldn't be doing this, I think it'd be easy for like change is hard for anyone. I mean, I pull into the parking lot and someone's in like my spot and I'm like, I might as well just go home. Change is hard. And so like, if that's how I feel about a parking lot, how does somebody I've also been here forever, but how does someone older, how hard is it for them to let go of that, especially if it's something so sentimental? But I feel like if we were to go and give all of this information in a polite way, in an accurate way, with like all these resources, I feel like it might be something we could definitely pick up in the future.
So I have one last question for you both. How could our schools in Nevada, what would you think would be a great way to start the conversation in classrooms to help Native American culture be represented in a more accurate and effective way? Like you said, we celebrate Black History Month. We celebrate our Latinos. Up here in the North, we have a very huge Basque culture. What would you think would be a good way to start that conversation to bring in because it's part of our history as an entire state, because as you said, we have one of the largest Native American populations in the nation, but we're not really talking about it in our classrooms. So what would you think would be the best way to start that conversation?
I think just bringing it up in general, like as an educator, you know, like we're always pushing and we're always learning. We're forever learners. And I feel like it's part of your responsibility as a teacher to go out and challenge yourself so you could do these things for your students. Even just talking about people who are making changes locally. I don't know if you remember, but I gave a presentation a couple years ago about here are these like local heavy hitters in Nevada. They're from Pyramid Lake, they're from Carlin, they're from Hawaii, they're from Reno. Just like who was here, who was here before this was Reno? What was happening while this was Reno? We have an Indian colony. Where did that come from? Same thing with Elko and Battle Mountain. They have colonies. They have Wells has the little colony. It's hiding, but it's still there.
Up on the hill.
Yeah.
Yep, I know exactly where it is.
And so just like and being in school forever, in college forever, I was able to see a lot of colleges, and this isn't limited to college, like, and it's also, people feel a lot of different ways about it, but land recognitions. Before you open up your humongous event where you have just about every school in the state, how about you could simply, like, this, both, like, we are on the homelands of the Washoe and the Paiute people, and this is, we, like, even though this is, I don't know what else goes into land recognitions. I've never written one, but like when we go places, people do land recognition. This is the home, these are the original homelands of these people. This is what they did. And it just puts, like, it doesn't put responsibility, but it acknowledges the fact.
But yeah, it would acknowledge, and also it would open up the ability to start a conversation, because then you could have those conversations about, these were the people that were here before us, and we need to recognize that what they were doing here was important, it was historical, it was relevant, and now they're still here, very much so. And that it can open the door, like something simple as that could open up the door for a really good conversation. I really do believe that.
Yeah, and I also, as someone who's been in all of these conversations, I always like to like end it with this, like, if you feel uncomfortable, like you're taking that in. If you feel uncomfortable, like, open it up. Why are you uncomfortable? And let's continue this conversation, because if you're uncomfortable, then like, that's exactly what I've done what I'm supposed to do, and you're acknowledging that. So like the whole, like, unpacking the uncomfortable part too is really, I feel like that's also a big, like, let me help you with that.
That's awesome. I love how you put that, unpacking the uncomfortable. And I think I think that's a great way to plant the seed to wrap up our discussion today. So thank you so much for joining us from all the way from Hawaii. We got people from Hawaii, we got Winnemucca, and we have Las Vegas. Are you in Las Vegas?
Everywhere in the state.
Everywhere in the state. So it was great to have you. Thank you so much for being our guest. And I think this is going to be a great conversation starter for our Nevada student leaders and those of the people that have been checking out our YouTube channel. We're going to get a copy of this to our communications coordinator. But just thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for doing this.
Thank you so much. I've learned a lot in just like the span of 20 minutes. And I don't know, I think it's going to help a lot of students just like taking that first step into, you know, educating ourselves in Native American heritage and culture. And yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you guys.